Classical music fans from across the globe are fixing their gaze on South Korea after a series of recent prize-winning performances from young music prodigies here in the country. Korea had already given the world many immensely talented classical musicians such as Jung Myung-un, Jung Kyung-hwa, and Jo Soo-mi, who have successfully passed on the torch to the next generation of emerging talent that include names like Jo Sung-jin, Son Ye-kwon, Im Dong-hyuk, and Son Yeoreum. Korean opera singers have also left their mark on the international stage in a discipline that has long been dominated by Caucasian singers. All this has been made possible by a unique education system for the gifted in Korea that allow these prodigies to maximize their potential.
In the first half of this year alone, 37 Korean musicians have won various awards at 40 international classical music competitions. This leaves no doubt about the fact that Korea is now home to some of the world's best musical talent. One important fact to note is that many of these musicians were trained exclusive in Korea, including Lim Yun-chan, the winner of this year's Cliburn competition. This goes to show that studying music overseas is not a requirement for local talent to flourish on the international stage. So how are young music prodigies being trained and educated here in Korea?
A K-classic fever has swept across the nation in recent months. This is following consecutive wins by Korean classical musicians at a number of renowned international competitions.
And the winner is Yekan Son-yeol.
Lim Yun-chan's win at the Van competition was the second by the Korean musician following Son Ye-kwon at the 2017 edition. Meanwhile, Korean cellist Choi Ha-young also emerged victorious at the recent Queen Elizabeth competition, which is widely regarded as one of the world's 3 most prestigious music competitions. That's not all. Korean violinist Yang In-mo added to Korea's trophy haul by coming in first at the Jean Sibelius violin competition held last month. All this on the heels of last year's numerous competition victories by Korean classical musicians, including pianist Park Jae-hong, Seo Young-min, and Kim Soo-yeon. So how did Korea, a country once far removed from the world of Western classical music, become such a force to be reckoned with at international competitions? We took a closer look at Korea's post-war history in search of answers to this intriguing phenomenon. Korea's passion for classical music can be traced back to the early years of its modern history, just following the Korean War. It was at this time that a boy by the name of Han Dong-il left for the US to study at Juilliard at the young age of 13. 11 years later, the boy had grown into a young man and a gifted pianist, becoming Korea's first global competition winner in the classical genre, with his award at the prestigious Levantrit competition. Then in 1974, Korean pianist Jung Myung-hun finished runner-up at the International Tchaikovsky competition to the joy of many people back home. Upon his return home, he was greeted by tens of thousands of people waving the Korean flag along a parade route. This was regarded as a special achievement at the time, when Korean classical musicians who could compete on the global level were still very few and far between. Han Dong-il, Jung Myung-un, Jung Kyung-hwa, and Kim Dae-jin are known to be Korea's first generation of classical musicians. They were followed by the second generation, which include pianists like Son Yeoreum and Kim Sun-wook. The baton has since been passed on to Korea's third and current generation of musicians, such as pianist Jo Sung-jin and Lim Yun-chan. Their notable success at international music competitions had led to them being referred to as the K-classic generation. Korea's trophy haul at global competitions became especially notable following the turn of the century.
김선욱, 손여름 이런 아주 재능 있는 연주자들이 국제 무대에서 성과를 거두고 해외를 기반으로 해가지고 이제 활동하는 그런 모습들을 본격적으로 보여주면서 이제 시작이 됐다고 볼 수가 있겠고요. 그리고 또 이제 국제 무대에서의 어떤 성과 같은 것도 전해지면서 우리나라 클래식 음악계가 이제 본격적인 성과를 거두고 있구나. 이런 좀 인식이 좀 널리 퍼지지 않았나라는 생각을 합니다.
In the last 20 years, there were a total of 286 prize winners at the three major international music competitions, including the Chopin, Queen Elizabeth, and Tchaikovsky competitions. A breakdown of the winners by nationality showed Russia leading the pack at 72, followed by Korea in second at 36. The top 5 was rounded out by the US with 23 winners, and France and Japan with 20 and 16 respectively. By instrument, Korean violinists accounted for 11 of the 60 total winners, and another 11 of the 91 winning pianists. Based on these figures, it isn't a stretch to say that Korea has had one of the best showings of any country at international music competitions in recent years. What makes Korea's success unusual is that the country is producing more competition winners than many European countries, the birthplace of Western classical music.
우리나라는 단순히 음악 교육뿐만이 아니라 이제 사회 전반적으로 교육열이 굉장히 높고 그리고 또 사람들이 좀 성과를 지향하는 그런 성향이 상당히 강하죠. 아무래도 이게 국가 전체적인 어떤 국제 사회에서의 어떤 위치 이런 것들하고도 관계가 있을 텐데 이제 그런 면이 이제 클래식 음악계에도 작용을 해서 한국예술종합학교라든지 그리고 또 금호문화재단 같은 그런 영재교육 및 이제 후원 시스템들이 한 90년대부터 본격적으로 이렇게 갖춰지기 시작을 했어요. 그래서 거기에서 이제 체계적인 교육 시스템을 갖추고
The rise of Korean classical musicians can be attributed to its education system for the gifted that is always on the lookout for young prodigies and provide them with the necessary training to maximize their untapped potential. I'm now at Korean National Institute for the Gifted in Arts, where the next generation of talented Korean artists are learning their skills in classical music. Let's get inside and take a look. Aspiring young musicians are admitted to this school following an audition, and they are enrolled in a highly focused curriculum that works on their technique as well as real-world experiences in a competition environment.
국내 교육을 받아서 해외 콩쿠르 나가서 성과를 거두고 또 연주 활동을 하고 있는 그런 연주가들은 좀 한계가 있다 이런 평가들이 있었습니다. 하지만 이제 최근으로 오면서 일단 성과를 떠나서 음악성이라는 측면에서 상당히 높은 평가를 받는 그런 음악가들이 속속 등장을 하고 있죠.
Many renowned Korean classical musicians were trained at this institute, including Lim Yun-chan, violinist Yang In-mo, and pianist Park Jae-hong, among many others. First-generation artists like Han Dong-il and Jung Myung-un were educated outside of Korea. However, pianist Lim Yun-chan was trained exclusively here at home with no experience of going abroad. This may come as a surprise to many when more Koreans are pursuing their education abroad compared to the early years of the country's modern history. So how is this institute training young prodigies and successfully turning them into globally renowned musicians?
영재교육원은 이제 그 예능 쪽에 타고난 재능이 있는 학생들을 선별을 하고 또 저희가 집중적으로 개인 다른 원은 조금 다르기도 하겠지만 음악은 이제 개개인 그 학생과 스승의 1:1 교육이 이루어집니다. 근데 더욱더 중요한 건 우리 영재교육원은 다른 시스템과 좀 달리 한예종에 있는 교수님들이 직접 레슨을 할 수 있는 시스템으로 이루어지고 있거든요. 그래서 아주 어린 나이에서부터 집중적인 고 교육을 받을 수 있는 게 제일 중요한 것 같습니다.
The Korean National Institute of the Gifted in Arts has incorporated an apprenticeship system in their curriculum. So how does this exactly work?
도제식이 뭐 사실 얘기하는 그 1대1 베이스의 그 교육이 이루어지는 건데 그 아무래도 이제 1대1로 하다 보면 학생과 그 선생의 그 교류가 좀 더 가까워지고 또 개개인에 맞춰서 학습을 할 수가 있어서 굉장히 중요합니다. 학생의 음악성, 뭐 재질, 그 타고난 재주 그런 거를 해치지 않고 좀 더 거기를 집중해서 개발할 수 있도록 좀 옆에서 많이 도와주는 편인데 우선 학생이 오면 제일 중요한 거는 이 학생이 악기를 잘하는 법을 배워야 됩니다. 그게 결국은 악기가 자기 몸처럼 느껴져야 된다는 걸 저는 믿고 있거든요. 그 개개인의 레슨도 중요하지만 그거 외에 이제 이론, 시창 청음, 또 앙상블 레슨 그리고 오케스트라 이렇게 다양한 자기 악기를 할 수 있도록 많은 채널을 열어서 개성을 살려갈 수 있는 이제 그런 교육 시스템입니다.
The young students in training here are each vying to become the next Lim Yun-chan or Jo Sung-jin. We spoke to them to find out more about what their training is like at this institute.
예전에 다른 데서 교육받는 것보다 뭐가 제일 좋고 재밌었어요?
음악하는 친구들을 많이 만날 수 있고 교수님들이랑 선생님들이랑 같이 이렇게 배울 수 있어서 좋았어요.
바이올린 연습하는 거 너무 힘들진 않아요?
힘들 때도 많지만 그래도 해냈을 때 너무 좋아서 그냥 계속 하고 있어요.
플룻 외에도 뭐 음악 이론이라든지 시창 청음, 뭐 오케스트라, 실내악 등의 다양한 과목들을 공부할 수 있어서 그게 좋은 것 같아요.
그러면 최종적인 목표라고 하면은 좀 어떤 게 있어요?
나중에 이제 공부하고 돌아와서 한국에서 이제 학생들을 가르치는 좋은 선생님이 되고 싶습니다. 꼭 해외에서 공부하지 않아도 뭐 요즘 그런 연주자분들도 꽤 느는 추세지만 그래서 저도 한국에서 좋은 교육을 받을 수 있도록 할 수 있었으면 좋겠습니다.
Are there any particular standards and criteria that the institute relies on when choosing which students to admit to their program?
I met Kim Dae-jin, a world-renowned pianist and president of the Korean National University of Arts, and had a conversation about the school, music, and young music prodigies.
되게 어려운 질문이에요, 사실은. 일단 영재성이 있냐 없냐를 판단하는 데 있어서 기본적으로 그 판단을 하는 사람들의 역량이 굉장히 중요하다고 생각을 하고요. 뭐 예리한 통찰력도 필요할 것이고 또 무대 위에서 벌어지는 여러 속성들을 충분히 이해하는 사람들이 지금 영재를 평가하고 있느냐도 굉장히 중요할 것 같다라는 생각이 들고
The institute's aim is to nurture world-class musicians without needing to send them abroad to complete their education, a goal that they have already achieved for the most part.
굳이 우리 학생들이 유학을 가야 커리어를 이룰 수 있는 그런 상황보다는 우리가 직접 키울 수 있다는 그 의지 하나에 아마 저희가 많이 따라온 것 같습니다.
There is one man in particular who has been closely watching the Korea's classical music scene and its education structure for over a decade. His name is Tiereroro, a filmmaker and a TV producer at RTBF, a public service broadcaster in Belgium. He has also been covering the Queen Elizabeth music competition for the station for more than 20 years. Thierry was fascinated by Korea's unusual success in international music competitions, which compelled him to visit the country on many occasions and film a documentary on the subject. We asked Thierry which part of his film was the best representation of Korea's music education for the gifted.
Yeah. I think the most important thing in my movie is what said Kim Dae-jin, who is director of the KNUA, Korean National University of Arts. He said that when he started to teach in Korea, he was in jury of a big competition. He saw 4 Koreans playing in a row, and they were all playing the same. They were all the same face, the same hair, the same dress.
어린아이들이었죠. 걔네들의 그 뭐라 그럴까요? 이렇게 객관적이지 못한 것들은 다 없애버렸거든요. 삐죽삐죽 튀어나온 것 같은, 지금 생각해 보니까는 그들의 개성이었던 것이에요. 그래서 얼마나 후회가 되고, 제가 진짜 조금 약간 뼈아픈 그런 후회도 하기 시작을 했는데.
Yeah, it changed. I think the last 10 years it changed because the teacher understood that it's not only technique. We have to go beyond the technique and beyond the score, beyond the notes that are written. And so that's why all the winners, recent winners like Lim Yun-chan in Van Cliburn, Choi Ha-young, they really win with originality.
The story is told from the perspective of 8 young Korean musicians who make an appearance on the documentary. Theory refers to them as the K-classic generation, who are destined to open a bright new chapter in the country's classical music scene.
This is violinist Imji-young, one of the musicians who made an appearance on Theater's film. She became a household name in 2015 following her win at the renowned Queen Elizabeth competition. Im is also a graduate of the Korean National Institute for the Gifted in Arts, and this is how she recalls her experience at the school.
지금 돌이켜 생각해보면 지금 제가 전문 연주자로서 활동하는데 가장 근본적인 어떤 자양분을 배울 수 있었던 그런 실기 레슨, 그리고 또 이론 수업, 이런 것들은 결국 어린 시절부터 한국영재교육원에서 배웠던 그런 레슨들로부터 모든 게 이루어지지 않았나, 그런 생각이 듭니다.
Aside from the institute, Korea's Kumu Asiana Group runs its own cultural foundation to help young classical musicians find their footing. The Kumu Cultural Art Foundation, as it is known, provides extensive assistance to help nurture rising classical musicians and spares no expense to help them reach their full potential. Some of the beneficiaries of the Kumu Cultural Art Foundation include many renowned Korean musicians, including Sohn Min-soo, Kim Sun-wook, and Imji-young. Pianist Lim Yun-chan recently made his return home to Korea, where he received a hero's welcoming. Lim Yun-chan's exploit at the Van Cliburn competition made him an overnight sensation in Korea, even among people who aren't fans of classical music. At his press conference back home, his mentor, Professor Sohn Min-soo from the Korean National University of the Arts, was standing by his side. Luckily, I was given a chance to ask questions to Lim Yun-chan.
옆에 계신 손민수 교수님이 피아니스트 임윤찬이 걸어온 게 어떤 영향을 줬는지 여쭙고 싶습니다.
음악을 제외하고 살아가면서 경험할 수 있는 모든 것을 영향을 받았고, 피아노 레슨 하면서도 피아노 얘기만 하는 게 아니라 되게 다양한 장르의 얘기도 많이 했고.
Professor Sohn Min-soo first met Lim Yun-chan at the Korean National Institute for the Gifted in Arts when he was just 12 years old. Despite his young age, Professor Sohn knew he had a special talent on his hands when he saw Im playing on the piano with a sort of calm that was well beyond his age. Professor Sohn was something of a prodigy himself in his younger days, as pianist who won the 2006 Honen's competition in Canada, becoming the first Korean musicians to do so. So you are a teacher of Im Yun-chan.
Yes.
Yeah. So What's your teaching philosophy when you guide students in music and piano?
The students in my studio, they have to be responsible in each week what they bring to the table, to the piano. They have to be responsible. Otherwise, I ask them, is this what you want? Is this what you want to be shown as a pianist? Imagine this little studio as a Wigmore or Carnegie Hall. And are you willing to represent yourself as it is right now you're representing in front of me? And most of times the answer is no. Well, I don't try to exploit their weaknesses, but being responsible is a different thing in the music, and I require my students to be responsible and to be disciplined.
There are three key elements that led to the successful emergence of the K-classic generation. The first is Korea's knack for discovering hidden gems at a very young age. The second is the country's unique education system for gifted musicians. The final component is the generous assistance provided by the country's arts foundation over a long period of time. The K-classic generation as we know it today may not have been born without these three elements working seamlessly together. But as successful as Korean classical music scene has been, there are still few aspects to it that leave something to be desired.
어린 나이부터 조기 교육이기 때문에 사실은 본인이 무엇을 향해서 무엇을 원해서 가는지에 대한 어떤 뚜렷한 어떤 목적이나 어떤 목표가 없이 가다 보니까 사실 이미 너무 충분한 자질을 가졌는데도 음악에 대한 어떤 존재 이런 것에 대한 굉장히 막연한 좀 방대한 그런 질문에 이제 답을 찾지 못하고 포기하는 경우가 많아요. 근데 내가 왜 이 음악을 해야 되고 이 음악을 어떻게 펼쳐나갈 것인지 어떻게 이해할 것인지에 대한 좀 그런 넓은 시야를 갖게 되면 아마 해외에서도 더 우리나라의 연주자들이나 우리나라 클래식 수준을 높이 평가할 수 있는 그런 기회가 될 수 있지 않을까 생각합니다.
조금 냉혹하게 이것을 판단을 한다면 클래식 강국, 클래식 선도국가는 아닐 수도 있죠. 그렇죠? 더 엄밀히 말하면 영재 강국 뭐 이런 식으로 표현을 할 수 있을 것 같아요. 그래서 이런 훌륭한 영재들이 배출이 됐으니까 이 영재들을 세계 시장에 진입할 수 있게 해주는 역할은 반드시 필요한 거라고 생각을 하거든요.
Perhaps we are at an important transition phase and a crossroads, and these are simply necessary growing pains in order for classic music to gain mainstream popularity in Korea. The Korea National University of Arts was established 30 years ago by renowned South Korean critic and novelist Lee Ryung, who also served as the country's culture minister. He emphasized the fact that young prodigies who outperform adults needed a special education system to tap into their full potential, and his effort laid an important foundation that allowed Korea's classical music scene to become the global force it is today. Pop artists and classical musicians required a different approach in how they are trained from a young age, highlighting the need for more investment with a long-term perspective in mind in nurturing Korea's next generation of classical music prodigies.
When I gaze into Korean classical musicians, their eyes spoke of a true love on their art and no words needed to be spoken. Maybe these musicians want to give all they have in pursuits of their passion, which makes the rest of us eager to see what else they can show us in the near future. We'll be continuing our series on Korea's classical music scene next week to learn more about what Korea needs to do in order to compete with the global hubs of classical music like Brussels and Vienna.